The storm howled across the shoreline, waves exploding against the rocks like cannon fire. Jack, a homeless man with ragged clothes and a beard matted from weeks without shelter, crouched near the weak glow of a driftwood fire he had coaxed into life. The cold pierced through his bones, yet he stared out at the raging sea, something in his gut refusing to look away. Then he saw it, a glint of pale fabric, a child's cry carried on the wind, and two shapes tossed mercilessly onto the sand by the furious tide. His breath caught, a mother and her child. Jack's instincts tore through his exhaustion. He stumbled forward, boots filling with icy water, as he waded toward the struggling figures. The little girl coughed violently, clawing at the sand while crying. "Mommy!" The woman beside her lay still, waves slapping her body like cruel hands. Jack dragged the child first, wrapping her in his tattered coat, then turned back for the mother. She was heavier, dressed in what had once been an elegant coat, now soaked and torn. With a grunt, Jack pulled her free of the surf and laid her on the shore, his own chest heaving. The girl sobbed, clutching her mother's limp arm. Jack dropped to his knees, his dirty hands trembling as he pressed them against the woman's face. "Breathe," he muttered. "Come on, don't give up." He tilted her head back, pressing down on her chest in desperate compressions. For a terrifying moment, nothing. Then, a choking gasp, water spilling from her lips. She coughed violently, rolling to her side, dragging air into her lungs. Jack exhaled in relief, his own chest shaking. "Good," he whispered. "Stay with me." The girl looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, unsure whether to trust. The mother's eyes fluttered open, glassy and wild. She saw the stranger leaning over her, his filthy hair dripping, his torn jacket hanging from bony shoulders, his beard thick with grime. Fear shot through her expression. Don't touch us," she rasped, pulling her daughter close. Jack raised both hands in surrender, hurt flickering behind his tired eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you. The sea almost took you." The girl, shivering in his oversized coat, whispered, "Mommy, he saved us." But the woman's suspicion was unyielding. Years of privilege taught her danger wore rags. She turned away, clutching her child. The wind cut cruelly through the shore, and Jack saw the truth she didn't want to admit. Without warmth, without shelter, they would not last the night. He stood, gesturing weakly toward the city lights beyond the dunes. "There's a place, not much, but better than here." The mother tried to rise, but staggered, her soaked clothes heavy as chains. The child clung to Jack's coat, trembling. Torn between fear of the man and the storm's merciless bite, the woman finally nodded. "Just keep your distance." Jack said nothing, only adjusted the coat tighter around the girl before leading them inland. They trudged across the dunes, the sand wet and heavy beneath their feet. Every gust of wind slapped the wet fabric against their skin. The girl's teeth chattered. Jack slowed his pace so she could keep up, his bare hands raw from carrying driftwood and dragging bodies. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl peeked at her mother before whispering, "Lily." Jack nodded. "Pretty name." The mother said nothing, eyes fixed forward, watching him like a hawk. Her silence weighed heavier than the storm. Jack didn't ask for hers. He figured she'd give it when she was ready. After what felt like an endless march, they reached the edge of the city where abandoned warehouses stood like sleeping giants. Jack guided them to a derelict building with boarded windows and graffiti scars. Inside, the air smelled of damp concrete, but at least it was dry. A pile of blankets and a dented lantern revealed it was lived in Jack's home. "It's not much," he muttered, ashamed. "But it'll keep you warm." The woman hesitated at the doorway, her chin lifting as if refusing to stoop. But when Lily sneezed, she ushered her daughter inside with a reluctant sigh. Jack dug through his meager belongings, pulling out a battered thermos. "Still warm," he said, pouring into a tin cup. He handed it toward Lily. The mother's eyes narrowed. "Don't touch that." But Lily, too cold to care, reached eagerly. Jack pulled his hands back, setting the cup on the ground between them. "Your choice," he said softly. After a pause, the woman lifted it, sniffed suspiciously, then handed it to her daughter. Lily drank greedily, color slowly returning to her face. The mother watched Jack warily the whole time, her mistrust as sharp as the storm outside. As the fire in the lantern flickered shadows across cracked walls, Jack sat apart, giving them space. He studied the woman discreetly. Even drenched, her coat screamed wealth-tailored fabric, designer buttons, jewelry still clinging to her wrist. She didn't belong in a storm, nor in a warehouse with broken glass for windows. "What were you doing out there?" he asked quietly. She stiffened. "That's none of your concern." Jack nodded. "Fair enough." Silence settled, broken only by Lily's small hiccups as she finally drifted into exhausted sleep, wrapped in the ragged blankets Jack had offered. Jack stretched out on the concrete floor, his back aching against the hardness, but he made no move to take more comfort than them. Sleep didn't come easily. His mind replayed the surf, the limp body in his arms, the little girl's terrified eyes. He wondered who they really were. He knew enough to recognize money when he saw it, but money hadn't saved them from the sea tonight. When he finally dozed off, it was to the sound of Lily's breathing and the quiet, distrustful rustle of her mother, adjusting her coat, always keeping herself between her child and him. Morning light spilled through the cracks in the boards, gray and cold. Jack woke to find Lily sitting cross-legged near the lantern, staring at him curiously. She whispered, "You look like a pirate." He chuckled hoarsely. Not sure pirates sleep on concrete. Her mother stirred, eyes narrowing immediately at Jack. "Stay away from her," she snapped. Jack raised his palms again. "I just saved your lives, lady." The words came sharper than he intended, and her cheeks flushed with anger. "And now you expect what gratitude?" Jack's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, choosing instead to gather his few belongings. He stepped outside, the city's hum already awake. Cars honked in the distance, but here only pigeons moved among the ruins. Jack lit a cigarette butt he'd saved, dragging smoke deep into lungs already tired of life. He could leave them. He'd done his part. But when Lily peeked her head through the doorway, eyes wide and trusting, he knew he couldn't just walk away. He stubbed out the cigarette and returned inside, his voice quieter. "There's food nearby. I'll get some." The mother hesitated, but Lily whispered, "Mommy, please." Finally, she nodded stiffly. "Go, but come back." Jack returned an hour later with a sack of bread, bruised apples, and a few cartons of milk he'd bargained from a vendor who sometimes slipped him leftovers. He set the food down, watching Lily's face brighten. She tore into the bread with glee. Her mother ate with measured grace, though hunger betrayed her composure. For the first time, her eyes softened, just a fraction. "Why are you helping us?" she asked quietly. Jack shrugged. "Because someone has to." She stared at him, confused by the simplicity. In her world, everything came with a price. In his, Survival demanded kindness. As the day stretched on, the storm faded to drizzle. Lily explored the warehouse with childlike wonder, skipping between puddles of sunlight that slipped through the broken boards. Jack busied himself fixing the fire pit, using scraps of wood and an old grate. The mother sat by the blankets, watching both of them like a queen stranded in a foreign kingdom. Finally, she spoke. "My name's Catherine." Jack nodded. "Jack." The exchange was brief, but it shifted the air. Names meant something. They built bridges, however fragile. Lily clapped her hands. "Now we're friends." Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. That night, Catherine kept her daughter close, but she didn't flinch when Jack sat nearer to the fire. Lily dozed quickly, exhausted from the ordeal. Catherine's eyes lingered on Jack, suspicious yet unwillingly curious. "You've lived here long?" she asked. He shrugged. "Too long." She frowned. "You don't belong in a place like this." He laughed, bitter and hollow. "Lady, the streets don't ask for a resume." Her lips parted, but she said nothing. For the first time, she realized how little she understood about lives lived beyond marble floors and chauffeured cars. The following morning, trouble found them. Jack returned from scavenging with fresh bruises. His lips split. Catherine's eyes widened. "What happened?" He wiped the blood with the back of his hand. "Ran into some guys who don't like sharing corners." Catherine's stomach knotted. Lily gasped, rushing to his side. "You're hurt." Jack forced a smile. "I've had worse." Catherine's mistrust warred with reluctant gratitude. He had no reason to come back, yet he had. Despite blood and exhaustion, he chose to return to them. For the first time, Catherine wondered if appearances told the whole truth. As dusk fell, voices echoed outside the warehouse, rough, mocking, dangerous. Jack stiffened, motioning for silence. Catherine clutched Lily tightly. Shadows stretched across the doorway, and a man's voice sneered. "Thought we told you, Miller. This is our turf." Jack rose slowly, placing himself between the intruders and the mother and child. His tired body straightened, his voice low but firm. "Not tonight. Not here." Catherine's pulse pounded, fear clawing her throat. The girl whimpered, but Jack's stance was steady, like a shield forged from scars. For the first time, Catherine felt safer with him than without. The gang stepped inside, 3 men with hungry eyes and cruel smirks. "Got yourself a lady now, huh?" one taunted, eyes flicking to Catherine. Her stomach turned cold. Jack's fists clenched. "Leave them out of this." The leader laughed. "Or what? You'll fight us all?" Jack's voice dropped. "If I have to." Catherine held her breath as tension filled the air, thick as storm clouds. She had judged him as weak, broken. But now she saw the steel in him, the kind forged by survival. He might fall, but he would not yield. The realization unsettled her more than fear. The confrontation ended only when a police siren wailed in the distance, scattering the gang like roaches under light. Jack collapsed against the wall, sweat dripping down his temples. Catherine stared at him, speechless. Lily ran forward, hugging him fiercely. "You protected us," she cried. Jack managed a weary smile, his hand ruffling her hair. Catherine's throat tightened. She wanted to thank him, but pride chained her tongue. Instead, she whispered, "We can't stay here." Jack nodded. "I know another place, safer." Catherine looked at him, dirty, bruised, broken, and wondered how a man with nothing could still give so much. They left under the cover of night, Jack leading them through shadowed alleys and forgotten streets. Catherine's heels were ruined, her once luxurious coat torn, but she no longer cared. Lily skipped between them, holding Jack's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. For Catherine, every step beside this man was a paradox. He was everything she had been taught to avoid, yet he had saved them twice in 2 days. As the city swallowed them in its labyrinth of light and shadow, Catherine realized their journey was only beginning, and that her world would never be the same. The night was restless, every shadow whispering of danger. Jack led Catherine and Lily through narrow alleys, his boots splashing in puddles left by the storm. Catherine's heart pounded every corner, felt like a trap, every echo a threat. "Where are you taking us?" she demanded. Jack didn't slow. "An old shelter, abandoned years ago. Safer than the warehouse." She wanted to believe him, but trust was a currency she rarely spent. Yet when Lily stumbled, and Jack scooped her up without hesitation, Catherine saw something in his face, gentle resolve, that chipped away at her stubborn suspicion. They reached a crumbling church at the edge of town, its stained glass windows shattered, doors hanging crooked on rusty hinges. Jack pushed them open with a grunt. Inside, the air smelled of dust and forgotten hymns. Pews were overturned, hymnals scattered. But in the corner, blankets and candles marked another refuge. "Here," Jack said. "No one comes anymore." Catherine shivered, wrapping her daughter tighter. "We shouldn't be here." Jack shrugged. "We shouldn't be anywhere, but here we are." He lit a candle, its glow painting his worn face with shadows that made him look both fierce and fragile. Lily curled into the blankets, exhaustion overtaking fear. Catherine sat beside her, eyes still locked on Jack. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "You don't know us. We have nothing to give you." Jack settled against a pillar, his silhouette tall and weary. "I didn't do it for payment," he murmured. "You look like you needed saving." Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. In her world, favors always carried debts. But his voice was different. No hunger, no bargain, just truth. And that frightened her more than lies. Morning brought no peace. Catherine woke to the sound of shattering glass. Jack was already on his feet, knife in hand, moving toward the noise. A group of teenagers had slipped inside, spray paint cans rattling in their backpacks. "Look what we found," one sneered, spotting Catherine. Jack stepped between them and the pews. "Out. Now," they laughed. "Old man, you live here? Pathetic." Jack's grip tightened on the knife. Catherine pulled Lily close, her breath caught. Then one of the boys lunged, and Jack struck swift, controlled, sending the boy sprawling. The rest scattered, curses echoing as they fled. Jack lowered the knife, breathing hard. Catherine's pulse raced. She had seen boardroom fights, legal battles, ruthless negotiations, but never raw violence in defense of her. "You could have killed him," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "Didn't need to. Just needed him to know I would if I had to." Catherine stared, conflicted. He was dangerous, yes, but that danger had kept her daughter safe twice now, and for the first time, she wondered if safety sometimes came in forms society had taught her to fear. Later, Catherine tried to clean herself with water from a cracked basin. Her reflection stared back, smudged makeup, torn coat, hair matted by sea and wind. She looked nothing like the immaculate billionaire CEO she was. Jack approached quietly, setting down a ragged towel. "Here," he offered. She took it reluctantly, avoiding his eyes. You don't know who I am, she said, as if reminding herself. Jack leaned against the wall. Does it matter? She blinked, startled. People always cared who she was. But this man, he cared only about survival. The realization unsettled her more than the broken mirror. By midday, Lily's stomach growled, and Jack offered to scavenge again. Catherine hesitated. What if you don't come back? Jack gave a tired half-smile. Then you'll have peace from my dirty face. She almost smiled back against her will. Hours later, he returned with canned beans, bread, and 2 bruised pears. Catherine raised an eyebrow. How do you always find food? Jack shrugged. You learn the city's cracks. Food falls through. He handed the pear to Lily, watching her eyes brighten. Catherine's gaze lingered on him longer than she intended, curiosity softening the sharp edges of suspicion. That evening, rain pattered through the broken roof. Jack sat sharpening his knife while Catherine watched, arms crossed. Where did you learn to fight? She asked suddenly. He didn't look up. Army. Once upon a time. Catherine's eyes widened. You were a soldier? Jack nodded slowly. Was. Until life went sideways. He didn't elaborate, but the weight in his voice told her enough. Catherine leaned back, conflicted. The man she'd dismissed as a vagrant had once worn a uniform, sworn to protect. The contradiction gnawed at her. How could someone fall so far? Lily interrupted their silence, crawling onto Jack's lap. Tell me a story, she pleaded. Jack blinked, startled. Catherine tensed, ready to pull her away, but the look in her daughter's eyes stopped her. Jack cleared his throat. All right. Once, there was a man who flew with eagles. He thought he'd never fall, but one day, a storm came, and he lost his wings. He lived on the ground after that, watching the sky, waiting to feel like himself again. Lily tilted her head. Did he find his wings? Jack smiled faintly. Maybe, with help. Catherine's eyes softened despite herself. The next morning, Catherine insisted they leave the church. It isn't safe. Those boys might return. Jack didn't argue. They packed what little they had and slipped into the streets. But safety was an illusion. At a busy intersection, a sleek black SUV pulled up, tinted windows glinting. 2 men in suits stepped out, scanning the crowd. Catherine froze. Jack noticed instantly. You know them? Her lips tightened. Business rivals. They've been after me for months. Jack swore under his breath. Keep walking. He grabbed her arm, pulling her into an alley as the men's eyes swept dangerously close. They ducked through a maze of back streets, Catherine's expensive shoes ruined, Lily clinging to Jack's shoulders. Behind them, the men shouted, footsteps closing in. Jack shoved them through a rusted gate, slamming it shut. Run! They tore through an abandoned factory, dust swirling in the air. Catherine's lungs burned, her body unused to such exertion. But Jack never slowed, carrying Lily like she weighed nothing. When they finally collapsed in the shadows, Catherine gasped. Why are they after me? She swallowed hard, confessing. Because I exposed them. Corruption. Millions at stake. Jack shook his head. Figures. Trouble follows money. They found refuge in another forgotten building. This one, an old library, shelves gutted, but walls still strong. Catherine sank onto a dusty bench, Lily asleep in her lap. Jack watched her quietly. You put yourself in danger by standing up to them, he said. Catherine met his gaze. I had to. People's lives were being ruined. Jack studied her for a long moment. So maybe you're not like the others after all. The compliment startled her. No one questioned her morality. They only questioned her profit. But this man, with nothing, saw something in her she barely recognized. Days passed in uneasy rhythm. Jack taught Lily how to make games out of scraps, playing tic-tac-toe on the floor with pieces of chalk. Catherine watched her daughter's laughter return, a sound she hadn't heard since before the storm. Yet every time she looked at Jack, she felt a clash inside, revulsion at his dirt and rags, gratitude for his protection, curiosity about the man beneath. At night, when Lily slept, Catherine sometimes caught Jack staring at the ceiling, eyes haunted. Once, she whispered, "What happened to you?" He only shook his head. Another storm. One I didn't survive. One evening, while scavenging, Jack returned with a bloodied knuckle and a bundle of fresh bread. Catherine frowned. "What did you do?" He avoided her eyes. "Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." She pressed. "Did you steal?" His voice hardened. "I got food. That's what matters." Catherine recoiled, unsure whether to be grateful or horrified. But when Lily tore into the bread, smiling with joy, Catherine stayed silent. She realized survival blurred lines she had once thought unbreakable, and Jack lived every day inside those blurred lines. That night, thunder rumbled again, distant but threatening. Catherine curled around Lily, unable to sleep. Across the room, Jack kept watch, knife resting on his knee. She studied him in the candlelight, the weariness, the scars, the quiet alertness. He looked more soldier than vagrant in that moment. "Why do you keep risking yourself for us?" she whispered. Jack hesitated, then said, "Because I failed someone once, I won't fail again." Catherine's throat tightened. She wanted to ask who, but his gaze told her the wound was still bleeding, even if hidden beneath dirt and time. Their fragile peace shattered the next day. The suited men returned, this time with more numbers. Catherine spotted them from a window, panic flooding her veins. Jack cursed. "They must have tracked you." Catherine grabbed Lily. "We have to run." But Jack shook his head. "Not yet. Running without a plan is suicide." He scanned the building, eyes sharp. "There's a back exit, but they'll be expecting it. We need a distraction." Catherine stared. "What kind of distraction?" Jack met her gaze with steel. "The kind that keeps them chasing me, not you." Before she could protest, Jack shoved a pipe into her hand. "If they find you, don't hesitate." Catherine's hands shook. "I'm not." "You will if you have to," Jack interrupted. Then he moved, fast and silent, slipping out a side door. Moments later, shouts erupted outside. Catherine's stomach lurched. He'd drawn their attention. Through the window, she glimpsed him sprinting through the rain, men chasing, guns flashing in the dim light. Her heart clenched. This man, filthy and broken, was throwing himself into fire for her and Lily. She wanted to scream, but all she could do was pray. Hours passed like lifetimes. Catherine held Lily close, every creak of the building sending her pulse racing. Finally, the door creaked, and Jack stumbled inside, soaked, bruised, but alive. Catherine exhaled so hard it hurt. "You're insane," she whispered. Jack smirked through bloodied lips. "Maybe, but you're safe." Catherine's eyes burned with tears she hadn't allowed in years. She wanted to thank him, but words caught in her throat. Instead, she pressed a rag to his wound, hands trembling. For the first time, she touched him willingly, not with fear, but with fragile, reluctant care. That night, Catherine couldn't sleep. She watched Jack from across the room, his chest rising and falling as exhaustion finally dragged him under. Lily, curled beside him, held his rough hand like it was the softest pillow. Catherine's heart twisted. She remembered boardrooms, chandeliers, the sharp edges of power. None of it had ever felt as real as this dust, danger, and a man who gave everything without asking for anything. For the first time, she wondered if she had misjudged not just him, but her own world entirely. Morning came with fragile light, painting the broken windows gold. Jack stirred, groaning, but alive. Catherine met his eyes across the room, something unspoken passing between them. Gratitude, respect, confusion. Lily bounced up, smiling. "We're a team now," she declared. Catherine almost corrected her, but the words stuck. Maybe her daughter was right. Maybe, against all odds, this unlikely alliance had become something more. Catherine didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. Their journey with Jack was far from over, and the storm that had thrown them together was only the beginning of a larger reckoning. Dawn thinned into a gray mid-morning, the kind of light that makes cities look honest, and Catherine decided that hiding was a slow kind of dying. She dialed her general counsel from a payphone that still worked when you talked to it tenderly, and said she would sign nothing, retract nothing, and would meet the Attorney General at noon with everything she had, recordings included. Jack listened from the curb, a cut healing poorly along his cheekbone, saying little. Eyes on the door of the library where Lily colored a paper sundae. "Then they'll come hard," he murmured. "Let them," she answered. They came faster than pride or courage could lace their boots. Two dark SUVs drifting by like sharks that know which boat leaks, men in polite suits whose politeness ended at the wrists. Jack smelled the intention before he saw it. "Some people wear violence like cheap cologne. Back door," he said, already moving. But the front swung wide, and a voice said Catherine's name, like an apology sharpened to a point. Lily's drawing fluttered to the floor. "We just need a conversation." The lead man smiled, and that was when Jack stepped between them, a wall made of scars. He knew their kind, had worked for their kind, before gravity rearranged his life, had been paid to anticipate threat, to build rings of caution around people who could buy hope by the acre. Years ago, he'd been a security contractor for a Carter Dynamics spin-off, a name Catherine hadn't spoken because it was a bruise on her company's ribs, and when Jack said the spin-off, when he said the date, when he said the file she thought she alone remembered, Catherine felt the floor tilt. "You were there," she whispered. "I was the one who warned compliance," Jack said. It had been a smaller storm than siphoned funds, falsified safety tests, a whistle half blown. Jack had sent an anonymous packet that stalled a product launch and saved a handful of first-shift workers from burns they never knew they almost wore. And for that kindness, he'd collected a pink slip, a smear, and the quieter punishments men with expensive pens can write. The bottle finished what the board started. He didn't tell Catherine all of it. He didn't need to. She saw the seam where the company she loved cracked a good man, and her apology stumbled, useless on such old ground. "Now we'll fix it," Jack said simply, as if the remedy were as obvious as bread, then turned his attention to the room where the suits had spread, a geometry of angles and shortcuts. He walked their path in his head, measured reach and reaction, and how fear travels a child's spine. "No heroics," he told Catherine. "You're the headline they want. I'm the footnote they'll underestimate." She almost laughed. How does a footnote stop a chapter? but his eyes were busy with distances and outcomes, and she understood he would trip their narrative, then hand it to the law already rolling. The first man reached, that harmless little touch men use to own a room. Jack moved his wrist 6 inches, enough to make the hand reconsider his career, then guided him into a shelf with a groan of old wood and older pride. A second suit came at a faster angle, and Jack stepped into him instead of back, letting momentum do arithmetic. "Stop," Catherine said, her voice the kind that had ended mergers. Not to save the men, but to keep Lily from learning blood the way most children learn crayons. The man didn't stop, because money teaches bad hearing. Sirens, thin at first, fattened with purpose. Catherine's counsel, blessedly stubborn, had called in favors and subpoenas, and now blue lights stitched the library's cracked windows with the promise of consequence. One of the suits scooped Lily in a desperate calculus, a pawn snatched when a king feels the board tilt. Jack went still in the way predators go still, every line in his body a sentence whose subject is enough. "Don't," he said, and it wasn't a threat so much as a weather report. The man backed toward the side exit, Lily rigid with not crying. "Walk," Jack told Catherine. "Talk." Catherine's voice didn't shake. She said the man's name first, because names pull people closer to themselves. Then she said the statute he was breaking, the prison where his colleagues currently learn patience, the judge whose patience had limits and whose calendar had room today. And while she talked, Jack moved like a second hand around a clock face, small steps, no hurry, letting panic spend itself. Lily's eyes found him, the way small boats find lighthouses through fog. "On my count," Jack murmured. And when he reached 3, the man saw only Jack and forgot the child in his arms. "You don't need to be strong when angles are your allies." Jack shifted the man's elbow. Not his ego, just enough to make tendons complain, and Lily slid like truth slips out of a bad story into Jack's chest. Catherine's gasp contained a year's worth of breath. Police filled the doorway with competence and paperwork, hands practiced in putting endings on the kinds of sentences that begin in rooms like this. The lead detective took one look at Catherine, one at the suits, and said to Jack, "You okay?" Jack nodded, surprised at the question. "We all will be," Catherine answered. Statements breed statements. The room filled with pens and phone lights, and the slow metabolism of accountability. Catherine handed over a flash drive and 3 sworn affidavits, the product of weeks she hadn't slept, the cost of saying a truth with zeros attached. The detective listened without interrupting, then shook her hand not as a billionaire but as a citizen. "We'll finish this," he promised. "Finish aloud." The suits went away in bracelets, their phones bagged, their swagger folded like cheap lawn chairs. Lily held Jack's thumb in a small fist and did not let go, as if he might evaporate. News travels on feet and wings. By evening, the story running under the footage was not Billionaire in scandal, but Billionaire saved, whistle recovered, and in the cutaways. A ragged man with a cut healing along his cheekbone, whose name anchors refused to use like it might unmake them. Catherine stood at the podium in a municipal building that smelled of floor wax and hope, and said sentences her PR team would normally fear, about systems that reward cruelty, about debts that can't be paid with money, about dignity, about a man who'd saved her twice in 2 days, and once years ago. She said his name into microphones, not once but 3 times, because repetition teaches belief. When someone asked, "Isn't he just a homeless man?" Catherine's eyes did not blink. "He is a man," she said softly, and the just fell off the sentence like a leaf that gives up its grip when autumn insists. Lily, perched on a folding chair, waved at no one in particular and whispered to Jack, "This is our movie," in a conspirator's glee. Jack, who had never been the star of anything but his mistakes, had the good sense to look like he might cry. Offers arrived wearing the clothes of redemption, TV specials, book advances, an apology from a board chair, a job in a marble lobby smiling at people who would hurry past. Jack sorted them the way he sorted trash behind restaurants, knowing what could be salvaged and what would stink in the Sunday. Catherine brought one more. Head up a pilot program, build the way shelters are supposed to be built. Small, stubborn, precise safety marshals recruited from the street, trained to read danger before it grows teeth, paid on time, trusted from the start. No charity titles, Jack said. Real work, she promised. They rented a brick space 2 blocks from the library, where the windows still showed the shadow of stained glass. The paint was new, but humble, the kind of warm that makes shoulders loosen. And the sign on the door read, "First Watch," because Jack believed the first person to see trouble should be the first person to stand between it and the people walking. He hired 3 veterans whose demons had names and 2 grandmothers who had stared down dealers with nothing but aprons and love. Catherine wired the budget, then stepped back and didn't explain the mission to anyone who hadn't lived it. On opening day, the mayor said polite things and the cameras did their clicking, but the best part was the lunch that followed. Stew that tasted like home, and a table long enough to make loneliness wait its turn. Lily handed out paper badges she'd made with stickers shaped like stars. "You need one," she told Jack, and pinned it crooked on his shirt. "So you remember." He touched it like you'd touch a relic. Catherine stood a step away, unsure where to put the happiness in her chest. For once, she didn't monetize it. She let it be heavy and earned. Some nights the old weather came back, the smell of wet concrete in Jack's dreams, the echo of feet running toward a fight he couldn't finish, a bottle cap rolling to the edge of something and staying there. On those nights he sat on the stoop outside, First Watch, and counted the slow parade of people who made cities work while the rest slept. Catherine sometimes joined him with 2 coffees, no speeches. They talked in the grammar of tired friends. 3 words, then silence, then 1 word that meant 5. Lily drew constellations on the sidewalk with chalk and named one Safe Harbor. There was one more reckoning, because stories without a final test feel like tales, not lives. The man who'd grabbed Lily posted bail and posted threats. He came looking for blame, the way men like him come looking for mirrors. He found First Watch instead, and a room full of people who didn't wear suits but wore resolve like armor. Jack didn't swing. He didn't need to. He handed the man a restraining order and a live stream camera, and the man's courage evaporated in the solvent of witness. Police, no longer bored by his kind of money, finished the chapter. Months passed. Catherine's company lost investors who tasted conscience and spat. It gained others who preferred their profits without the metallic aftertaste of harm. Lily finished a school project about someone brave, without once mentioning balance sheets. Her drawing showed a bearded man holding a paper sun that looked suspiciously like the one she'd dropped the day everything nearly broke. Catherine kept the flash drive in a safe, but the part of the story she guarded most carefully couldn't be encrypted. The moment she learned that worth is not a number, and safety sometimes comes in a coat that smells like rain. Jack moved into a studio above First Watch, with a door that locked and a sink that didn't cough. He kept his pack by the bed for weeks, because habits are stitched into the skin. but Rusty's old collar hung from a nail like a shrine to the dog, who had accompanied him through winters darker than weather. On paydays, he bought apples for the front desk and a pair of socks for anyone who asked without asking. He signed his name on forms and didn't flinch, and when he passed the mirror, he looked like a man you might ask for directions. One evening, they went back to the beach where the storm had thrown them together. The wind, a gentler thing that carried laughter instead of sirens. Lily chased gulls and called the horizon hers. And Catherine stood with her shoes in her hand, the ocean licking her ankles like a harmless rumor. Jack watched the water as if it were a complicated friend. "You saved us," Catherine said. "Not dramatic, not public, just true." "Twice," Lily added. Jack shook his head. "We saved each other." The sky rehearsed a sunset, and for once no one hurried. The world, for a long, forgiving minute, felt correctly arranged.